I do want to jump right into it and start off with saying, well, one of the things that has been said is this trial is going to happen April 2013, but what has to happen before the trial is that the people that have been named to go on trial have to be arrested first. How do you think that's going to unfold?
I think first is to clarify a notion that has been created that the court gave this date giving in consideration of a general election that is set for March next 2013. These two are very distinct processes, and they have no any linkage of whatsoever. Now, coming straight to your question, two things are very important. One is the process of rolling out the evidence to the defense from the prosecutor and being able to give adequate time to the prosecutor as well as the defense to prepare their respective submissions. Now, on the questions about whether some of there are two candidates, there are two accused persons who are actually presidential candidates, they are facing a major dilemma in that if, for instance, they are going to be, the elections are going to take place and one of them proceeds to win the next general election, which is one scenario before the trial begins, then Kenya will have a situation where you have a president who is actually expected to be sitting at the International Criminal Court throughout the proceedings. The second scenario is you go to the elections, then the country have a runoff, which means that either of the candidates will be in a runoff, and which then means that that candidate will not actually be on the runoff, which means that he will be bad, actually, because he will be expected to be sitting in the court. So the events that are likely to unfold is a scenario where, in either way, whether you go to elections before the trial begins and you get a candidate, one of them winning, you have a president who always lives to be in the court, or actually if that candidate wins, you can have a Bashiru situation where you have a sitting president who just calls the court bluff and does not attend the court proceedings.
But this is exactly what I was going to ask you. Is how does the court enforce it? Because, I mean, you have to arrest these people for them or have some kind of process that happens for them to appear in court. And we do have Omar al-Bashir, who has got outstanding warrants right now, and he has not appeared before the ICC yet. So just in terms of whether this is going to affect the elections in any way or not, I think that's a question that probably Kenyans would like to know.
I think even the hard question even becomes, how does the Friends of Kenya relate with a president who is indicted by the International Criminal Court and he's expected to transact business on behalf of the country? First, you are going to be a very isolated person. Nobody wants to transact business with you, which also means that you are putting the whole country into jeopardy and its long-term interest. And for your information, when you look at the World Bank report, looking at the Kenyan economy outlook, which was released about 2 weeks ago, it gives you not a very encouraging picture. So you do not want to have a situation where that will bring more problem to that kind of a picture. So therefore, the issue here is the Kenyans have to make a very decisive decisions in terms of whether these people can, in the first place, be able to run for a public office. And for purpose of the wider world out there, the Kenyan Constitution under Chapter 6 and also Article 145 of the Constitution actually puts a very high threshold in terms of the people who hold public offices. And therefore, there is a critical legal determinant that has to be done before going to elections as to whether this kind of people can actually, even in the first place, be in the running, be presidential candidates, or even hold any other public office.
What I would like to ask you right now is what are you hearing from Kenyans, just in terms of how they're responding right now? Because I would imagine this is public knowledge in Kenya that as you say, two prominent people who could be standing for the presidency, they've got this cloud standing over them. How are Kenyans relating, and how are they responding to this issue?
The opinion is highly divided. In fact, and this is because the Kenyan politics are driven more largely by your ethnic background more than issues at hand. And therefore, the background from where particularly these two accused persons come from, you'll find that they seem to be rallying their respective communities around them, which means that the issue at hand is not being debated from a sober, objective point of view and looking at the bigger picture in terms of the country interests, but it is being looked more inwardly from your ethnic background, where you are coming from. And that means that the real critical questions that Kenyans are supposed to be asking themselves and looking at it into terms of the implication of either of these people being as a president, I think that issue has not been dealt with adequately by Kenyans. So opinion is divided depending on which community you come from and the interest that you have vis-a-vis those particular individuals.
Now, Kenya is a signatory, from my understanding, Kenya is a signatory to the ICC. But some of the questions, the debate that I've heard when it comes to the ICC, when it comes to these trials, and not just talking about Kenya here, just talking about the Africans that have been called before the court, is that what about courts here in Africa? Why can they not try these leaders? Why does it have to go to the ICC? What is your opinion on that?
The ICC, under the Rome Statute, operates on the principle of complementarity, which is the primary responsibility of those particular states where international crimes has been committed. They have the jurisdiction to prosecute the people who are responsible. And unfortunately, in the situation of Kenya, the government and the parliament failed to enact a special tribunal as provided for by the Commission of Inquiry into Post-Election Violence. And after so many times trying to enact the bill, the whole exercise failed. And one of the key recommendations in the Commission of Inquiry into Post-Election Violence was that the failure to enact a special tribunal automatically will make the reference of the Kenya situation to the International Criminal Court, which is exactly what happened. But looking at the bigger context in Africa, I think the biggest challenge confronting Africa is that I do not think that Africa has particularly the African leaders, has demonstrated the prerequisite political will to prosecute these people who commit atrocities within their jurisdictions, putting them into trial. Look, and a good example is, look at Hussein Habre case, which has taken too long to be processed, despite the fact that the African Union has been making commitment to prosecute Hussein Habre. Take the case of Bashir. The African countries have been making pledges, one pledge after another, that they are going to set up mechanism to prosecute Bashir. They have never been able to do it. So the political will has been lacking in African leaders to prosecute their own criminals. The second thing is having ability to establish credible, independent, and impartial judicial mechanisms that are able to prosecute crimes of whatever nature. Look, take a good example. In Kenya, apart from the judiciary, there are other two critical arms of justice system, that's the police and the Directorate of Public Prosecution, are literally as intact as they were before the enactment of the Constitution. In fact, in a report that was released yesterday by one of the think tanks on dealing with the security matters, actually said that the only progress that has been made on reforming the police is only 9% of the targeted goals that were supposed to be done, which means that Kenya is still very far from establishing a fully fledged, independent, credible criminal justice system in Kenya, which is actually the single biggest problem confronting the wider part of Africa.
Thank you so much for joining us.